Good, evil. From masked villains in movies to white-garbed angels, society has always told us a depiction of what is good and what is evil. And one of the oldest stories of learning the difference of good and evil is the story of Adam and Eve from the Bible. Yes, that Bible, for its believers and deniers and stories that no one has really read. And say what you will about it, it is an influential book. And it's also a great segue to my new topic today of discerning between good and evil and whether or not it's a sin. Hello, I'm Jay Lewis. For those of you who don't know about the story of Adam and Eve, the story goes as such. God creates Adam and creates Eve, and they live together in paradise for such and such time, until one day they eat from the forbidden tree of knowledge, and they gain the knowledge to tell between good and evil. And because of this, God casts them out of paradise. At first, many would see this as a cautionary tale of curiosity killing the cat, where we seek out knowledge, and because of this, we are turned away from God. This can be seen as something that's implied to when we are very young and taught about it in schools and in society and whatnot. But is there a bit of wisdom to this story of creation and knowing the difference between good and evil? Let's take a look. In the Bible, it says, Adam and Eve eat the fruit, and they know the difference of good and evil. And because of this, in the next line, they clothe themselves because they know they are naked. Why do they clothe themselves? What does being naked have to do with good or evil? What does that have to do with the war between heaven and hell and good and evil of your soul? Well, actually, it's never really specified what kind of good and evil that they know. Are they talking about a good and evil between God and the devil, and between love and hate? When Adam and Eve clothe themselves, it is not because they know the difference between heaven and hell, but really they clothe themselves because they believe that's what's good for them. As in, they know what's good for them and what's bad for them. And because of this, God cast them away. You can find a similar concept of this knowing the difference between good and evil in Eastern culture. There is the myth of a Garuda. It is a half-bird, half-man creature that is able to fly so high into the world, so high that it cannot tell the difference between its friends and its enemies. And because of this, it opens its heart up to the entire world and helps everyone and everything it can. And yes, while it's important to know the difference between what's good for you and what's bad for you, this can be taken to a whole nother level, where it's an us versus them scenario. And it's easy to see how pointing out the differences between ourselves and other groups spawns a lot and a lot of hate. And we can see that this also applies to situations. Whereas when we see the situation as a bad thing, or it's not gonna go well, we are so much less likely to put in our best effort and our best energy. Instead of embracing everything as it is the life and the love that it should be, we'll close up because we think it's going to be bad, and we think it's not going to go well. And because of this, we don't put as much energy as we would if we thought it was a good situation. We close ourselves up, and in doing so, we turn away from God, life, what have you. So that's one way to look at the story of Adam and Eve. Not of not as this cautionary tale of curiosity, but rather this cautionary tale of how pointing out too many differences can turn you away from God. And maybe we're not really meant to discern what's really good and bad for us as far as the situation goes, but rather we are to embrace the situation with an open heart, no matter what it is. At any rate, I hope this is a refreshing change of pace from what you've heard of the Bible and what you've heard of Adam and Eve. And maybe if this really is what the writers of the Bible were talking about, maybe this isn't such a bad book after all. I'm Jay Lewis, and I'm going to see what else this thing has to say. To the woman he said, I will greatly increase your pain of pregnancy. In pain you will give birth to your children, and your longing will be for your husband, and he will dominate you. Oh, for crying out loud. Who wrote this thing? I want to know what the... Oh, for crying out loud.